Welcome to True Echo, where real stories meet powerful truths. Today's episode is about identity, injustice, and a mission that nearly collapsed in silence. What if the person protecting your life was the one you feared most? Stay with us. The sun hovered low over Savannah, Georgia, casting amber shadows across cracked sidewalks and porch railings in the quiet Sandfly neighborhood. Keisha Delaney sat low in the seat of a silver Hyundai rental, her fingers lightly gripping the steering wheel. She wasn't scrolling her phone. It was a decoy. Nothing dialed, nothing recorded. Just a prop. To the casual observer, she was a woman waiting on a friend. But Keisha wasn't here to wait. She was here to watch. Across the street sat a cream-colored house, blinds halfway drawn. Two sedans rested in the driveway, untouched for over an hour. Her informant said the man inside was dangerous, tied to a domestic arms network linked to multiple states. 6 months of tracking came down to this one moment. Her orders were clear: confirm presence, do not engage, report back. She didn't wear a vest. No badge was visible. And she didn't need one. Keisha was CIA, deep cover, alone, and trained to read danger like most people read street signs. She took a small sip of cold coffee, bitter, stale, grounding. Her eyes never left the mirror. Then the barking started. A small white terrier danced on its hind legs at the edge of a lawn across the street. Its owner, a woman in her 50s with a sharp jaw and suspicion stitched into her face, peered toward Keisha's car. The longer Keisha remained still, the tighter the woman's expression became. Keisha knew this drill. She didn't belong here, and not because of any badge or op. Because she was black. Alone. Sitting in a rental car in a white neighborhood. She glanced at the house. Still nothing. No curtains moved. She couldn't leave yet. The suspect was still inside. But the woman? She turned and walked inside, phone pressed to her ear. Keisha's stomach tightened, but she didn't flinch. Her fingers grazed the lapel mic clipped inside her jacket. Bravo 1, she whispered. Possible compromise. Civilian made a call. Still eyes on. No movement. A crackle came back, Roger. You're not cleared to move. Sit tight. She exhaled slowly. The absurdity burned. She was risking her life for this nation, tracking weapons that could end up in a school shooting, and someone had just called the police on her. Minutes passed. Long enough for fear to fester. Then, blue and red lights stung the pavement like angry hornets. One squad car. Then another. 2 officers stepped out. White. One younger, agitated. The other older, alert but more measured. Keisha didn't blink. She couldn't afford to. Ma'am, the younger one barked, already near her window. You live around here? Keisha turned. Calm. Precise. Government surveillance, she said. I can't answer questions. ID, he snapped. She reached slowly into her jacket, pulled out her federal credentials, nothing flashy, just real. I'm on assignment. No further details authorized. The older cop moved closer. Mind stepping out of the vehicle? That was it. The turning point. If she stepped out, she'd lose the target. If she refused, she risked escalation. You're interfering with a federal operation, she warned. Radio this in. Ask for Deputy Director Leo Evans. Passcode Echo, 93, Delta. But the younger one wasn't having it. That's not how this works. Step out of the car. Now. Keisha didn't move. Her breath was calm. Her eyes locked on his. You're making a mistake. He opened the door anyway. The moment her foot touched the ground, it was over. Hands up. Turn around, the younger officer snapped, reaching for her arm. Wait, the older cop began, but it was too late. Keisha's face was pressed against the car hood, her cheek scraping warm metal. Her sunglasses hit the pavement. Her wrists were twisted, clamped in cold steel. She didn't resist. She didn't plead. She endured. Behind her, the older cop radioed in. His voice low. Urgent. Keisha glanced at the suspect's house. Just as she feared, the curtain twitched. A flicker. He was watching. Her cover was blown. She was no longer invisible. She was the threat. The neighbor peeked out, hand still holding the phone. Her son beside her, eyes wide. Keisha sat on the curb, cuffed. Hands behind her back. Powerless in appearance, but not in spirit. Then, an engine roared. Tires squealed. An unmarked SUV hurtled onto the street like thunder. It stopped inches from the sidewalk. Doors flew open. Out stepped a tall man in a suit, face set like stone. Leo Evans. Release her. Now, he commanded. Who? The young officer began. She's CIA. She showed you ID. You just blew a 6-month surveillance op, genius. Evans uncuffed her himself. Keisha stood slowly, rubbing her wrists. I'm not hurt, she said, but the op is. Her eyes flicked to the house. He saw me get cuffed. The radio on the older cop's shoulder crackled. Suspect fleeing on foot, northbound. Possibly armed. Keisha didn't wait. She grabbed a tactical satchel from the SUV, clipped her earpiece back on, and ran. She leapt a hedge, crossed yards. Her muscles burned, but her instincts were clean. Ahead, a flash. A dark figure darted past a shed. Federal agent, she shouted. No response. She tossed a flash beacon toward the corner. It burst, light and noise. He stumbled. Keisha dove, tackling him into a fence. Move and I break your wrist, she warned. Behind her, the older cop arrived, panting. You got him? Keisha didn't turn. He's not going anywhere. But she wasn't thinking about the takedown. She was thinking about what could have happened, if she had been a second slower. If the wrong video went viral. If the mission had truly been lost. Keisha pressed her knee harder into the suspect's back as he cursed and struggled beneath her. He was wiry, angry, but not prepared for someone like her. You were the woman in the car, he hissed, panting. That's right, she replied coldly, tightening her grip. And while you were sorting blueprints and counting your cash inside that cozy house, I was 10 feet away. Watching everything. I'd still be there too, if I hadn't gotten cuffed for looking suspicious. The suspect groaned, but stopped resisting. The old fence creaked under their weight as Keisha yanked his hands behind his back and clipped the flex cuffs from her belt around his wrists. He was secure. The older cop, Mason, stepped in behind her, his face grim and quiet. We'll get transport here in 2. Make it fast, Keisha said, breath still shallow. There's no way this guy was alone. If he had watchers, they might already be relocating. She finally stood, brushing the dirt from her pants. Sweat trickled down her back beneath her jacket. She had him, but the mission's real value was in what they could still extract. 2 more unmarked SUVs pulled into the alley, agents in plain clothes emerging with weapons drawn and earpieces blinking. One agent nodded at Keisha. We'll take him. She stepped back, letting them lift the suspect to his feet. As they loaded him into the SUV, Keisha locked eyes with him one last time. No smugness. No taunt. Just the hard, clear silence of a professional doing her job. By the time she returned to the safe house, an old duplex outfitted as a temporary command center, the sky had gone from orange to slate. The air was thicker, heavier. Everything about the day hung on her shoulders. Inside, She poured herself coffee from a scorched pot and leaned against the wall. Evans entered a minute later, his tie now fully undone, his expression unreadable. "You good?" he asked. Keisha nodded. "Alive." He tossed a file onto the table beside her. They cracked the laptop. "You're gonna want to see this." Keisha took a long sip before flipping it open. Inside, photographs, schematics, emails. Evidence of transactions far beyond what they had assumed. She froze when she saw it. "Schools," she whispered. "And churches," Evans added grimly. "Not just Georgia. They were targeting 3 other states. All within the next 60 days. Keisha stared at a highlighted line, Street Point James Chapel, Fayetteville. Priority 1. Max damage. Her godson's church. She sat down slowly. This wasn't just trafficking. It was coordinated. A multi-state terror ring. Evans nodded. And it almost got away because a neighbor didn't like the look of a black woman parked on her street. Keisha rubbed her wrists. The skin was red now, bruising at the edges. Her jaw was tight. But her voice didn't waver. "If I'd driven off, they would have moved. Hidden the files. Buried the intel. You stayed," Evans said. "And because of that, we stopped something bigger than anyone knew." She didn't answer. Not right away. She just stared at the photo of the church and thought about the kids who ran down those halls, the old man who rang the bell every Sunday morning, the tired faces that looked for hope every week and could've found fire instead. Not on her watch. The next morning, Keisha stood on the steps of the CIA's Southeastern Field Office, unofficial, unnamed, invisible on any government map. Her duffel hung from one shoulder. Her clothes were clean, but the bruises on her wrists were now a deep, angry purple. Inside, she met Evans in a windowless conference room lined with soundproofing panels and tension. "You're sure about this?" he asked. "I'm flying to DC," she said. "Debrief, regroup, prep for what comes next." Evans hesitated. "They're going to ask questions." She raised an eyebrow. "About what? Why I didn't shoot the officers who arrested me? Or why I didn't press charges?" "No," he said quietly. "They're going to ask how close we came to losing everything, because of a bias we pretend doesn't exist." That landed hard. Keisha slid the duffel off her shoulder and dropped it onto the table. "Let them ask." But before she could walk away, a junior agent, clean-shaven, clearly fresh, entered the room with a printed report. He looked unsure, as if nervous to speak. "We just decrypted another file," he said, handing it to Evans. "This one changes things." Evans scanned it, his face going paler with each line. "What is it?" Keisha asked, stepping closer. He handed it to her. The document contained chat logs. Names. Cities. Payment transfers. But one detail leapt off the page. A law enforcement contact. Listed as, Local PD, Savannah. Tag, Green 47. She blinked. "That's a badge number." Evans nodded. "That's Officer Green. The younger cop who cuffed her. The one who wouldn't listen." Her pulse thudded once in her ears. Loud. Sharp. They had a cop feeding them movement reports. Street patrols. Local raids. That's how they stayed ahead. Keisha didn't sit. Didn't breathe for a second. "That house I was watching," she said. "They knew no cops would touch it. And when you showed up, alone," Evans added, "he made sure someone got scared enough to call it in." Now the whole game had shifted. This wasn't just ignorance. It was sabotage. From inside. Keisha grabbed her jacket. "Where are you going?" Evans asked. She didn't look back. "To finish what I started." The Savannah Police Department's administrative building was built like a fortress, stone facade, iron accents, and tinted windows that reflected the morning sun without offering even a glimpse inside. But Keisha wasn't intimidated by walls. She walked in with the badge of someone who didn't need permission. Her stride was steady, not aggressive, but it turned heads. Officer Green was at his desk near the back of the open bullpen, reviewing body cam footage on a monitor. When he saw her, he froze. Keisha didn't speak. Not yet. She let the silence coat the room first. Let the other officers glance at her, then at him. The air thickened. "You," she said flatly. He blinked. "Agent Delaney, I didn't." She tossed a folded printout onto his desk. The page landed with a slap. The bold words, "Internal complicity, law enforcement leak, Green 47. "That's your badge number, isn't it?" she asked. His face paled. "I don't know what this is." "I didn't." Evans entered behind her, followed by 2 internal affairs agents. He spoke with a steel Keisha had only heard in war zones. "You've been feeding info to a domestic arms network," Evans said. "Access logs show your terminal leaked 6 classified raid plans in the last 90 days. Green's voice cracked. "I didn't mean, look, I didn't know what they were doing. It was just, extra money. I thought. You thought you were helping the good guys, right?" Keisha said, her voice sharper now. "That's what they told you. Maybe they wrapped it in some flag, threw in a defending liberty line or 2. But they were plotting mass attacks." He stood, panicked, sweating. "You can't prove I knew that." "We don't have to," Evans replied, nodding to the IA agents. They moved fast. Green's hands were behind his back in seconds, his cuffs clicking the way Keisha's had the day before. But nobody was watching with interest now. Just quiet shame. Keisha stared at him once more. "You knew enough to know better. And you still chose wrong." As they hauled him away, she turned to the other officers in the room. None of them met her gaze. Good. Maybe they were finally thinking. Outside, she let out a long breath she hadn't realized she was holding. The wind carried the scent of moss and gasoline, old brick and boiling pavement. Savannah heat didn't let up. Neither did she. Evans followed her to the car. "We'll start dismantling the rest of the contacts today. There's a secondary safe house on Tybee Island, we'll question the suspect there. You want in?" She shook her head. "I'll file my report. Then I'm off this case." He looked surprised. "You sure?" Keisha looked toward the horizon. "I'm sure." The plane to DC was half full, mostly suits and students flying standby. Keisha sat by the window, her fingers wrapped around a cup of ginger tea. The bruises on her wrists were fading now, but her memory hadn't. As clouds drifted below the wing, her thoughts ran back to Fayetteville. She hadn't told Evans, but the church mentioned in the recovered file wasn't just where her godson had been baptized, it was where her mother still volunteered. That one detail had changed everything for her. In this line of work, she had learned to detach. To let go. But some things cut too close. She closed her eyes, letting the hum of the engines carry her thoughts into silence. The moment she landed, she was greeted by a black SUV with diplomatic plates. Inside, 2 suited agents nodded. No small talk. Just urgency. She was driven to Langley, fast-tracked to the operations wing, where Director Nora Clayton was waiting with a folder in her hands and a camera already recording. Keisha was about to be debriefed. Officially. The conversation was clipped. Professional. But after the camera was off, Director Clayton sat down across from her and asked, "Are you okay?" Keisha thought about that question. Really thought about it. "I was handcuffed in my own country for doing my job," she said. And we were seconds away from letting domestic terrorists scatter because someone didn't believe I belonged. Clayton nodded solemnly. But you didn't walk away. You saw it through. That matters. Keisha stood. What matters is stopping the next one before it starts. And with that, she handed over her final report. One sentence was highlighted. The enemy didn't come from outside. He wore a badge and stood on our side. As she left the room, a junior officer passed her in the hallway and said softly, "Ma'am, thank you." She nodded but didn't stop walking. Back in Savannah, the neighborhood was quiet again. Children played. Sprinklers hissed. Porch lights blinked on with the sunset. The woman who had called the police now stood alone in her driveway, watching her son toss a ball into a hoop. She hadn't spoken to anyone since the arrest. She held a cup of tea, cold now, and stared down the street where the rental car once sat. Her son paused. "Mom, was that the lady from before?" She nodded. "She was helping people," he said. "Why did you call the police?" She didn't answer. Just looked at the sky and whispered, "I didn't see what I should have seen." Across town, Officer Mason sat in the locker room, staring at his badge. The video footage from his own body cam played on repeat in his mind. He'd watched it a dozen times. The moment she said, "I'm a federal agent." The moment he hesitated. He turned it off and sat still for a long time. At the same moment, Keisha stood on her balcony in D.C., the Potomac glittering in the distance. A new case file rested on her desk inside, but she hadn't opened it yet. Tonight wasn't for war. It was for memory. And for clarity. She didn't need headlines. Or apologies. What she needed was simple. Truth. Integrity. And space to do her job without being seen as a threat by the people she was trying to protect. Sometimes, being a hero didn't look like capes and celebrations. Sometimes, it looked like sitting on a curb in cuffs, never breaking. Sometimes, it looked like staying. Even when they asked you to leave. Keisha Delaney stayed. When others doubted her, when the system failed her, when she had every reason to walk away, she stayed. Not because it was easy. But because it was right. And because people's lives depended on someone who wouldn't flinch. So the next time you look at someone and think they don't belong, ask yourself, what if they're the only reason you're still safe? Don't let assumptions cost lives. Thanks for watching this episode of True Echo. If this story made you think twice, subscribe, leave a comment, and share with someone who needs to hear it. Because truth echoes loudest when it's spoken.